She returned a
You wrote
lost
this for
note
someone,
I'd written for someone else.
but it
But when
felt
her
like it
eyes
was
met
me.
mine, I realized it had always been meant for her. I didn't recognize my own handwriting when she held it out to me. Folded once, careful, like it had already been forgiven for something. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind that doesn't expect anything from you. The cafe near the river was nearly empty, just the hum of the fridge and the soft scrape of a chair somewhere behind me. I was there because I'd missed my bus and because I'd learned, lately, that waiting felt easier when there were other people pretending not to notice you. She stood by my table for a second before I realized she was looking at me. "Excuse me," she said. Her voice was calm, practiced but not cold. "You dropped this yesterday. Outside, near the bookshop." I looked at the paper in her hand and felt something in my chest shift, like furniture being moved quietly in the dark. It was a note I'd written weeks ago, maybe months. I didn't carry it anymore. I wasn't supposed to. I don't think that's mine," I said automatically. She smiled just a little. Not amusement. Recognition. "You wrote it on the back of a receipt," she said. "And you crossed out the first line. Twice. That did it. That small, unnecessary detail." I took the paper from her, our fingers brushing. Not dramatic, not slow, just enough to register. She didn't pull away right away. Neither did I. When she finally sat across from me, it felt less like a choice and more like gravity finishing a sentence. She was older. That was obvious in the way she sat. Upright without trying, hands folded like they'd learned patience the hard way. Mid-40s, maybe more. Her coat was too warm for the season, like she'd left in a hurry or stayed out too late. There were faint lines near her eyes that didn't ask to be smoothed out. "I didn't mean to read it," she said, "but it was already open." "That's okay," I said, though it wasn't. Not really. The note wasn't long. It wasn't poetic. It was just honest in a way I didn't allow myself to be when someone might answer back. I'd written it for someone who never stayed still long enough to hear me finish a thought. Someone who didn't come back. She slid my coffee toward me without asking. It had gone cold. I drank it anyway. "You wrote this for someone," she said carefully. Then she paused. The silence stretched. Not awkward, just loaded. But it felt like it was me. I laughed once because I didn't know where else to put that sentence. She watched me closely, like she wasn't sure if she'd gone too far. "I almost didn't come today," she added. I kept the note in my pocket. I told myself that was enough. Why didn't it stay enough? I asked. She looked at the window instead of me. Outside, the river moved the way it always did, like it didn't care who was brave enough to follow. "Because some things don't like being carried alone," she said. We talked after that, about nothing important. Books, the shop, the way time slips when you stop checking it. But under every word was something else, something pressing gently but insistently, like a hand at the small of your back, guiding you forward. When she stood to leave, I felt it before it happened. That tightening, that almost loss. "I'm glad you came back," I said. She hesitated, just a breath. Then she reached into her coat and placed the note between us again. "Keep it," she said, "but this time don't lose it." Before I could answer, her phone buzzed on the table. She looked at the screen, then at me, and in that look was a decision forming, unfinished, waiting. The cafe door opened behind her, and everything paused. The door closed again. Whoever it was passed without stopping. The moment resumed, but differently, like a song that comes back a half step lower. She silenced her phone without checking the message. That felt important. She slid it into her coat pocket and stayed standing, one hand resting on the back of the chair like she might still leave if she leaned the wrong way. "I should go," she said. It didn't land like a decision. "You don't have to." I replied too quickly, then softened it. "I mean, only if you want to." She watched my mouth when I spoke. Not in a way that made me feel studied. In a way that made me feel heard. "Amara," she said finally, as if we'd only just arrived. "And this is probably a mistake." I nodded because that felt honest. I said my name, then added, "I'm 28. I wasn't sure why I said it like that. Like a disclaimer. Her mouth tilted, not smiling. I figured. That was when the risk showed itself. Not loudly, just enough to make the air heavier. We walked out together. The late afternoon had cooled, the lights stretching thin and gold across the pavement. She tucked her hands into her sleeves, and I noticed a faint line on her left ring finger, lighter than the rest of her skin. No ring now, just the memory of one. I was married, she said, unprompted, like she'd felt me looking. A long time. We're untangling things. I didn't ask what that meant. I learned that some words needed space around them to breathe. I don't usually talk to strangers, she added. Especially not younger ones who write notes they don't mean to lose. I didn't mean for you to find it, I said. I know, she replied. That's why it mattered. We stopped at the river railing. The water moved slow, reflective. She leaned her elbows against the cold metal, then winced and laughed quietly at herself. I used to come here with my son, she said. When he was little, he'd throw rocks and tell me what each splash meant. The word son landed between us. Not sharp, just solid. I swallowed. How old is he? 22. The math happened whether I wanted it to or not. I stepped back half a pace, then hated myself for it. She noticed. Of course she did. That's the part, she said gently. The part that makes people rearrange their feet. I'm not. I started, then stopped. There was no clean sentence there. I know, she said again. She always did that. Left room for what I couldn't finish. I told her about the woman the note was meant for. How I'd love someone who treated time like something disposable. How I'd learned to write things down because saying them out loud felt like handing someone a knife and hoping they wouldn't move. Mara listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached out, not to my hand, not fully, but brushed the back of her fingers against my wrist, brief and grounding. That wasn't foolish, she said. It was brave. The touch lingered a second too long. Neither of us pulled away. The river kept moving. The city kept pretending nothing unusual was happening. And in that quiet space between us, something settled, unspoken, undeniable, waiting to see which of us would be the first to admit it was already there. I don't remember who leaned in first. I only remember the space between us shrinking until it felt deliberate, like a decision we were both pretending not to make. Mara's hand was still near my wrist. I could feel the warmth of it even when she pulled back, even when she straightened and cleared her throat like she'd just remembered herself. This is where I stop, she said. Her voice didn't shake. Her fingers did. I nodded too fast. Okay. But neither of us moved. The river made a low, steady sound behind us. Somewhere a bike bell rang. Normal life, continuing, impatient with whatever we were doing. I shouldn't have come back, she said, not accusing me. Herself. You brought the note, I said. That wasn't nothing. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked past me, and for a second I thought she was done, that she was about to say goodbye and mean it. Then her shoulders tensed. Mara, the voice came from behind us. I turned first. A man stood a few steps away, tall, familiar in the way of someone who belonged in her life without asking permission. Late 40s. Tired eyes. He wore a jacket that had been folded and unfolded too many times. Her name sounded different when he said it. Heavier. Ethan, she replied. No introduction followed. None was needed. The space rearranged itself. I thought you were picking up groceries, he said. Not angry. Careful. Like someone walking through a room full of breakable things. I did, she said. I just ran into someone. She didn't look at me when she said it. That stung more than I expected. Ethan's gaze moved to me, polite but sharp, taking inventory. My age, my proximity, the fact that my hands were empty and still somehow occupied. I said because silence felt worse. He nodded. Hey, a pause. Thick, loaded. I should go, Mara said again. This time it sounded real. Ethan checked his phone. I'll walk with you. She hesitated. Just enough. I'll meet you at the car, she said finally. To him. Then to me, softer, I'm sorry. For what? I asked. She didn't answer. She just turned and walked away, leaving the word unfinished between us. I stood there long after they left. Long enough for the cold to find me. Long enough to realize my hands were shaking. That night, my roommate noticed. He always did. You look like you lost something, he said, leaning in the doorway while I pretended to read. I found something, I replied. It sounded worse. I didn't text her. I didn't know if I was allowed to. The note sat on my desk, unfolded now, its creases softening. I read it again and again like it might change. The next afternoon, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stared at it until it stopped. Then it buzzed again. A voicemail. Her voice filled my room, quieter than before. Controlled. I shouldn't have let you see that part of me, she said. And I can't do this. I need you to understand that. A pause. Breath. But I keep thinking about the way you listened. And I don't know what that means yet. Silence. Then, almost a whisper, please don't throw the note away. The line went dead. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone still in my hand, knowing two things at once. She was pulling away. And somehow, impossibly, she was closer than ever. I hadn't meant to follow her. Not really. But the moment her car pulled out of the lot that afternoon, I found myself stepping into the street, letting the chill settle into my bones as I traced the curve of her path along the pavement. Mara didn't see me at first. She had her eyes on the dashboard on the steering wheel, like she was steering not just the car, but herself through something she hadn't named yet. I knew that look. I'd had it when someone I shouldn't have loved leaned too close, when desire and fear tangled in the same heartbeat. I stopped when she parked at the old bookstore near the river, the one she'd told me she came to with her son years ago. She didn't glance at me when she stepped out. Not at first. But then, her lips pressed into a thin line. She folded her arms, shivering, not from the cold. The way she held herself, defensive and fragile, made the ache in my chest almost unbearable. I wanted to reach out, touch her hand, reassure her, tell her everything I couldn't say aloud. A laugh broke the silence. Her laughter. She didn't see it in me, but the sound landed like a knife. Another man emerged from the store. A younger man, maybe her son's age, though I knew it wasn't him. He carried a bag of books and looked at her with familiarity, something in his posture that marked him as safe, acceptable. I could feel it before I understood it. Heat crawling on my chest. Not anger at the other man, not entirely, but a possessive, frantic, unreasoned claim I didn't know I was capable of. Mara's head tilted when she saw me. Recognition flickered, and something unspoken passed between us. But then she looked away, toward the younger man, and my chest tightened. I didn't expect to see you here, she said, voice careful. I wasn't planning on it, I said, too quickly, aware that the words sounded hollow even to me. The younger man waved, polite but distant. Mara nodded in return, and then, with deliberate slowness, she took a step closer to me. Her eyes held mine, wide and unguarded, vulnerable. She wanted me to see her, the real her behind the lines and years, behind the life she was untangling. And I wanted to see her. God, I wanted to. But I also wanted her to turn away, because staying was dangerous. I started. The word felt useless. I didn't know whether to speak it, swallow it, or throw it into the river. She lifted a hand, brushing my sleeve. Lightly. And then she moved. The next morning, the note wasn't on my desk. I noticed it immediately, the empty space, sharp and hollow. My first thought was that I'd left it somewhere, maybe the cafe, maybe the river railing. But then my phone buzzed. A text. From Mara. We need to talk. Meet me at the bookstore. Alone. I hesitated. Alone. The word carried weight I didn't want to unpack yet. And then, halfway to the door, another message arrived. Don't bring him. My stomach sank. I didn't know who him was. She hadn't said a name, but I felt it like the ground had shifted under my feet. I arrived at the bookstore before she did, the bell above the door jingling faintly as I stepped inside. Shelves of books loomed, familiar, comforting. She wasn't there yet. I traced my fingers along the spine of a worn poetry collection, trying not to imagine the conversation that was about to come. Then she appeared. Mara. Her coat hung from her shoulders like it carried invisible weight. Her hair caught the afternoon light, gold strands softened by shadow. She looked smaller than the day before, more guarded. Hey, I said softly. Hi, she replied, voice taut. Not warm, not inviting, just taut. She moved toward the back of the store, hands clasped, eyes on the floor. I followed, careful not to close the distance too quickly. Distance mattered. I'd learned that already. And then she stopped, turned. I need to tell you something, she said. My chest tightened. She hesitated, took a breath. And then it hit me, the twist I hadn't seen coming. I didn't just lose a husband, she said. I'm separated. But Ethan, he isn't out of the picture. He's watching. Watching. The word pressed into me like ice. My throat went dry. You mean he knows about us? I asked, though I hated the idea, even saying aloud. She shook her head. No, he doesn't know yet. But I can't. I can't lie about it anymore. He called this morning. He's coming to the city sooner than I expected. I thought I had more time. I tried to breathe, try to focus. She was here, in front of me. But the walls of possibility were collapsing fast. I don't want him to, she trailed off. Her voice trembled despite herself. Stop what? I asked, though the words felt clumsy. Stop me, she admitted, almost whispering. Stop me from this. She gestured vaguely, toward me, toward the tension, toward the connection we hadn't named but couldn't ignore. I wanted to reach for her, but the thought of Ethan's presence made the gesture feel reckless, dangerous. And yet, every fiber of me wanted to close the space between us anyway. Her eyes searched mine, vulnerable, afraid, desire tangled with fear, a messy knot neither of us could untangle quickly. I don't know what to do, she confessed. I want you. I don't want him to ruin this. Or me. Or us. I swallowed hard, heart pounding, hands itching to touch, yet frozen by reality. And then, just as she stepped closer, a shadow fell across the aisle, someone entering the store with slow, deliberate steps. I looked up, and my stomach dropped. Ethan. Ethan's footsteps stopped just beyond the aisle, heavy enough to echo. Mara stiffened, and I could feel the tension radiating off her like heat from a stone. I wanted to tell her it was okay, that nothing could touch what was between us, but the words stuck in my throat. He cleared his throat. Not angry, not confrontational, just present. Solid. A reminder that the life she was untangling wasn't finished, wasn't hers alone to claim. Mara turned toward him first, shoulders squared, voice calm but fragile. Ethan, we need to talk. Alone. He looked at me for a brief second, measured and calculating. Then he nodded, slowly. The air shifted. He wasn't leaving entirely, but the space between us contracted, giving us something almost private. I took a careful step toward Mara. She didn't move away. Not immediately. Her hand hovered near mine, trembling slightly. The note, the one that started all of this, felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket. I shouldn't have come, she whispered, more to herself than to me. You did, I said softly. And that's enough. Her eyes searched mine, looking for an answer she didn't want to admit she hoped I'd give. I reached for her hand. Not aggressively, not like I could claim her. Just enough to touch, to bridge the impossible distance between what was and what could be. Her fingers met mine tentatively, like testing fragile glass. She inhaled sharply, and for a moment, the world outside, the river, the city, Ethan didn't exist. There was only that touch. Only the note, folded and refold, like it had carried all the words we hadn't said. I don't know if this is right, she admitted, voice shaking. I don't know if we have the right to feel this. I finished for her. She didn't answer. Instead, she let herself lean just a fraction closer, and I could feel her heartbeat against my palm. The air was thick with everything we'd been holding back. Desire, fear, guilt, longing. I'm scared, she confessed. I know, I said. Me too. We stood there, hand in hand, suspended between decision and consequence. And for the first time, neither of us tried to push the other away. Ethan's presence loomed, a reminder of the life she'd been tangled in. But she didn't retreat. Not fully. She stayed, just enough to make the choice messy and real. I don't want to ruin anything, she said quietly. You won't, I said. Not if we're careful. Not if we just start with this. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding, eyes closing briefly. When she opened them, there was a clarity there, fragile but certain. Okay, she whispered. We'll start with this. Her hand tightened around mine. A gesture small, simple, human. But it carried all the weight of confession, of surrender, of hope. We didn't kiss. Not yet. The note still lay folded in my pocket. The city still moved around us. Ethan still lingered in the edges of our reality. But for the first time, Mara and I understood that what we felt wasn't just fleeting. And maybe, just maybe, it was enough. The cafe smelled faintly of roasted coffee and old paper when I saw her again. The morning light soft across her hair. Mara smiled, a little more relaxed this time, like the weight of the past few days had shifted just enough to let her breathe. We sat across from each other, the note folded neatly between our drinks. Neither of us had opened it since that day by the river, and maybe that was the point. Some things weren't meant to be reread immediately. They were meant to be remembered quietly, like a promise whispered into your own pocket. I almost didn't come, she said, tracing the rim of her cup with a finger. Good thing you did, I replied, and it sounded truer than I expected. There was no dramatic declaration, no sweeping confession, just presence. Just two people who had chosen, however messily, to step into something that wasn't easy and wasn't simple, but was theirs. We talked about small things, books, the river, the weather, but under each word was a current of understanding that didn't need to be named. She admitted a few fears, the shadow of Ethan, the life she'd been untangling, the possibility of losing herself in something that felt so improbable. I admitted mine, the age gap, the insecurities, the absurd hope that maybe she could see me not as a boy, but as someone worth letting in. We didn't solve the world. We didn't erase the past. But we created a space where both of us could exist together, without pretending, without guilt swallowing every gesture. When she left, she paused at the door. Thank you, she said softly, for listening, for waiting, for not giving up. I nodded, fingers brushing hers for just a second. Enough to say, I'm here. She stepped outside, and I watched her go, the morning stretching around her like permission. And then, just as I was about to leave, my phone buzzed. A message. See you tomorrow. No elaboración. No fanfare. Just the promise of another morning, another conversation, another quiet step forward. I smiled, folded the note again, and tucked it safely in my pocket. Some things were worth carrying, even if only gently. And as I walked toward the river, the city waking around me, I realized that love didn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it came quietly, in touches, in shared silences, in notes left folded and found again. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy, but it was ours. And maybe that was enough. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next? If you loved following Mara and me, hit subscribe and join me for more slow burn, heartfelt stories that linger long after the last word.